Namaste, everyone. And yes, we are live with Mr. Peter, who is an author of 12 books, and he has conversed, interacted with celestial beings. And I'm here at his house in Weed near Mount Shasta. You know, I want personally for my viewers on my page, as well as friends and Facebook friends and whoever is listening to us right now, viewing us right now, I would like them to experience what I experienced yesterday with you, which is something which is out of the world. You know, we all live in a materialistic world, mostly outward world, but we kind of learned some techniques to go inwards. But you, not only you've looked inwards, found yourself, but you interacted with celestial beings, which is something which was out of the way. When we were in the car yesterday, you were telling me about your Vaikuntha experience, exporting to Vaikuntha, as well as, you know, interacting with celestial beings and interacting with Sai Baba after he passed away. These are all like mystical experience which normal, ordinary people don't have. So I would like to first welcome you to my page, Gita, the Divine Song. I'm interviewing you on right now. We are live on Facebook. And a big namaste to you.
And namaste to you, Gita.
That's today. And Mr. Peter, like, can you start with how actually you started the spiritual journey? You were born like spiritual in your childhood, or
no, I was an
how
atheist, you know, because I grew up in very materialistic environment in New York, not in the city, but in the suburbs. And you know, my friends' parents worked with the President of the United States, and they were very high up in the government. They were high up in the banking system. You know, they owned international corporations. And that's what I was being trained for. But I saw that they were not happy. You know, they drank a lot of alcohol. They had very stressful lives. So I thought, I don't want to do this, you know. And I prayed to God, yes, if there is a God, please show me what to do with my life. But I didn't get any answers, you know, that I could see. And but I used to wake up about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and my mother told me, I forbid you to wake me before 7 o'clock, you know. So I had 2 or 3 hours in the morning, think, what am I going to do? Well, I didn't know in India, this 4 o'clock in the morning is called Brahma Muhurta. That's the time to contact God. So one day, a being appeared off to this in front of me or to my side and taught me to meditate. And he didn't even use the word meditation. He just said, he initiated me into Shabda Yoga, which is the yoga of the inner sound in the head, you know, in your body. If you're very, very still, you will hear the sound, which is, you know, the prana and the energy circulating through the nervous system. And he didn't say, I'm teaching you meditation, this will take you to God. He just said, listen to the sound, the inner sounds, and that's all you have to do. And so I did that, and suddenly an hour would disappear like that, and I would have answers to questions. Oh, and then next thing I know, it's 7 o'clock in the morning, and my mother was happy. And later in high school, I would practice this. It would happen spontaneously. I would sit on the edge of my bed and go into samadhi, but I didn't have a name for it. And my mother said, what were you doing sitting on the edge of your bed, staring into space? And I said, I wasn't doing that. She said, yes, the last half hour you sat there just staring or with your eyes closed, looking down at the floor. And I said, no, I didn't see, there was nobody there. I was in that consciousness, Satchidananda, but I had no, you know, understanding. There was nobody to teach me what was going on. And, but I was still an atheist. Nobody said anything about God. And I prayed to God. God didn't appear to me, or God didn't give me what I wanted. I wanted a new bicycle or, a dog or something. God didn't give me those toys. But later in life, I moved to New York City, and I wanted to do something for my health, So someone said, try Hatha Yoga. And so I started studying Hatha Yoga with Swami Satchidananda. Well, actually, I started with somebody else first, but switched to Swami Satchidananda. At the very first class, I felt energy in my body. And I went, wow, there is something happening that is beyond the physical plane, So after that class, I went to bookstore. I said, what's your best book on yoga? And they gave me a book about Ramakrishna Paramahansa. And when I read that, it's like suddenly I had the spiritual quest, the desire to know more. And then I heard the American Baba Ramdas being interviewed. And during that interview, a beam of light hit me in the third eye, and I saw that it came from his guru, Neem Karoli Baba, in northern India. And he invited me. He said, please come. So like a month later, I was in India, sitting at the feet of Neem Karoli Baba. And that was really the beginning of my, real conscious spiritual quest. But he was not to be my, hands-on guru. I met over the course of 2 years many great yogis. I lived in a cave in the Himalayas with a student of Babaji. He had regular darshan of Babaji. And then, but still, nobody taught me. I mean, I met yogis that could live ages, did not age. They did not eat. And they could precipitate whatever they wanted, but they didn't teach me anything. This was very frustrating. And then one day I met Anandamayi Mai on the street in Jagannath Puri. And to make a long story short, she bowed. She went, she didn't say anything, but she bowed. And just like you did, you said namaste, which means the God in me honors the God in you. Well, when she did that, I experienced God. She wasn't just making the gesture. She was transmitting God consciousness to me. She was seeing God in me, not just saying, I honor God in you. And that hit me so hard that I went home and I meditated for 3 days. I said, I want to see in myself what she is seeing. And gradually I started to try to find that. But nobody taught me how to do that until I came back to the United States. And I had an experience where when I came back to the US, I said, oh, I'm back here in Maya again, where people are just pursuing material things, And I really didn't want to be in my body. One of the yogis I live with knew how to leave his body when he wanted. And he was getting ready to do that. And I thought, that's a good idea. I will leave my body too. So I went out to Muir Woods, which is this big forest of redwood trees near San Francisco. And then I prayed. I said, I should ask for permission to do this because this is a big decision. So I prayed to every saint and guru I'd ever heard of, please show me if it's time to leave my body, because I'm finished with the world of Maya, the world of duality. And suddenly a man materialized in front of me in a physical body. He looked just like a normal person wearing blue jeans and about my age, which then I think I was about 27. And he said, Peter, he knew my name, first of all. He said, I am the part of God that has been sent to answer your prayer. And you have finished enough of your karma that you can leave the earth. In fact, I will help you. And then he touched me on the third eye, took me out of the physical body, and we went to this celestial realm. I gave it the name yesterday when we were talking. I said Vaikuntha because it was a celestial realm where beings do not exist in physical bodies. They just exist as light. Now, behind me on the wall, that's a picture of what these beings look like, just that ball of light. Not all the rays coming out, but they were balls of light like a sun surrounded with beautiful colors. And they were in, it was beyond samadhi. They were in the God consciousness. And and the feeling of joy and bliss was overwhelming. And I said, this is it. This is where I want to be. And then I heard this crying coming from someplace, terrible crying. And I looked down and I saw the earth below me like this blue ball. And I saw the suffering on the earth and my heart went out. And I said, I want to go back and help people. And this being beside me said, you made the right choice. I want you to help me in my work, but you need training. And I want you to go to Mount Shasta. And the first person you meet there will tell you what to do next. And then the next thing I know, I was back in my physical body in the forest inside the tree. And then he said, now I will show you who I really am. And right in front of me, he turned into this being known as Saint Germain. This is what he looked like. And then he dissolved into air, just disappeared like Obi-Wan Kenobi, And I felt like I've been hit by lightning. I was very energized. And so when I got to Mount Shasta, a young man came up to me and he said, you are supposed to meet a lady by the name of Pearl. And he said, you can use my phone. So I went to his store and Pearl said, come right up. So I went to her house and she said, I've been expecting you. She was like a sweet old lady who looked like Yoda, from Star Wars. And she said, I've been waiting for you. And I said, how could you be waiting for me? We've never met. She said, Saint Germain came to me this morning and told me he was sending you to see me. And she really became my teacher. She became my teacher for the next many years, and she introduced me to other ascended masters. Now, in India, I think you would call these rishis, that they had all the powers of God beings.
Yeah. And you also had a teleporting experience, right? When you came to Mount Shasta while you were driving. Can you explain more about that?
After my meeting with Saint Germain, I drove from Muir Woods near San Francisco. I got to Mount Shasta. I left there at about 9. I got to Mount Shasta around 11. It's normally a 6-hour drive. I made it in 2 hours, but I had no recollection of that. Suddenly I appeared down by Redding or Red Bluff, which is physically impossible. So he wanted me to be here at a certain time to meet the man who would tell me to see Pearl. So for Ascended Master, this is nothing. And this is like Satya Sai Baba did the same thing after he died, supposedly died. He visited me in a car right near my neighborhood, but the car didn't make any sound. So anyway, Sai Baba drove up my street and he waved to me, but the car didn't make any sounds or anything. And then the car disappeared, So these great beings can do that. They're like God beings, like Krishna and Rama and so on. I'd like to, maybe talk a little about that, about, people got into worshiping God by a different name, because how do you imagine what God is? It's very hard to imagine, much easier to think of a Krishna or a Rama or Shiva or Saint Germain or Jesus, something like that. Krishna says, I am everywhere and in everything. But Krishna, the Sanskrit, Krishna means that which cannot be crushed, which is indestructible. That is God. Just like Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's the same thing. It's not like you're supposed to worship Jesus as a person or Krishna as a person. They're trying to tell us we're everywhere and everything. It doesn't matter what name. Krishna said, I am in the twinkling star. I am in the flower. You know, I am in the farthest part of the universe, but I am here now in a body. When you say I am, or you meditate on that, that can take you to the source, you know? Whether it's Jesus or Krishna, when Krishna says, I am in the star, so are you. Krishna is in you, or the Krishna consciousness, or the Christ consciousness, or the God consciousness. When you meditate on I, that takes you to the source. Who is actually saying I? And you can observe that. If you go beyond the ego is observing the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions. But who is observing the ego having those emotions? Meditate on that and ask, who is the observer? The observer is your God presence, the I am presence, or the Atman. You know, it's like Aham Brahmasmi. That's in the Sanskrit. I am the presence of Brahman. It's not the presence of the God Brahma, but you are the Brahma consciousness.
If anybody has any questions, it's the time to ask right now.
Ask, Mr. Peter G a question.
Yes.
He covered extensively in very short, time, all his experiences. But I would like to know, you have behind you Lakshmi Ji's picture. I also see Jesus' picture, and you have this being, how you saw the beings in the divine realm. So my question is, when you first had encounters, you had no idea of who Lakshmi Ji is, I assume, because you're not from India.
No.
So how you felt? What were your reactions to those, visions?
Yes, well, it's very perplexing for an American to go to India because there seem to be thousands of gods, not just Jesus, you know, like in the West, it's just Jesus or Mary, you know, but in India, there are thousands. So I thought, how could all these be real? But then I had the experience, you know, like Ganesh, for example. You know, a doctor cannot attach the head of an elephant to a human baby, it would not live. So this obviously has some meaning. Ganesh exists on another plane of existence. And I have experienced Ganesh. I had Ganesh remove obstacles for me. So I know these beings. These are what are called, in Tibetan Buddhism, called yidams. They are aspects of our own self.
So when you say that aspects of ourselves, what do you mean? Can you please elaborate?
Aspects of consciousness. In the great sea of consciousness, God takes on whatever form is necessary to teach us. You know, it's very hard to relate to abstract, pure consciousness. Then you're in the Advaita state and there's nobody there. There's nobody experiencing it. You're in the oneness.
Mr. Peter, we have one more question from one of the Facebook viewers from Netherlands, Anjani, her name is, and she's asking, can we take astrology seriously?
Oh yes, absolutely. But don't give your life to it. It has to be a good astrology. It's like saying, should we take the weather report seriously? You know, the weatherman doesn't know exactly what's going to happen, but he said, you have this front and that front meeting, there's 90% chance of rain. So if you have one planet and another planet making an aspect, it's a certain energy, but you don't know what's actually going to happen in your life, you know? So it's good to use astrology to understand the lessons that you're learning in life, but you still have your illusion of free will. You still have to make your own choices. You don't let the astrologer tell you what to do. Like, people feel different around the full moon. I asked the policeman in New York City, what happens during the full moon? He said the crime rate goes way up. So obviously the full moon was affecting people. It's ridiculous just to ignore that. So
Yes, yes. And just like it's just like GPS. Today morning, I took GPS for guidance, but also it made me go round and round. So I had to call you and come back here.
yes. Well, that's the problem with all this technology, with all the religions, with all these, everything that exists. It wants our attention, like the news. You should listen to this news or that news. It wants your energy, your consciousness. You have to make the decision to get it inside from your God presence within you. You could not take a breath without God. Your heart is kept going by God. And God has very good hearing. God will respond by any name you call it, whether you say Lakshmi or Shiva or Saint Germain or Krishna, Allah. God hears you. Even if you say, "Dear God, please help me."
We have another question, Mr. Peter. How did Peter Ji get the name Mount Shasta?
Yeah, after my first trip to India, I was camping on Mount Shasta and I was fasting. And Saint Germain appeared to me one morning. I didn't see him, but his voice, and he told me my past, my present, and my future. And I didn't really like what he said too much, and he said, change my name to Mount Shasta. And I said, no way. I argued with him. He said, I had a lot of friends who went to India, they changed their names like Ramdas, Krishnadas, Haridas, all these Indian names. And I didn't do that. I said, I didn't change my name at the feet of Neem Karoli Baba, so I'm not going to change it now. And he said, well, you will. So I didn't plan to live in Mount Shasta, though. And since I was writing a book, I decided to use it as a pen name. But when I came back to Mount Shasta, that's what people called me. So.
Gita, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Ramarishi, wants to ask a question, I think.
Yes, thank you. Peter, I really enjoyed your book about the violet Tara. Of course, my wife's name is Tara, so it's a personal thing for me. But also, I've been very devoted to Tara for many years of my life. And could you speak a little bit about that book, about what you wrote in that book, The Violet Tara?
Yes. Well, I've had initiations from Tibetan lamas in the white Tara, green Tara, and red Tara. And so it was in my consciousness. I understood about Tara and what a Yidam is. A Yidam is a meditational deity. This is not a woman that was born at a certain time and then achieved the rainbow body or became a Mahasiddha. These are what I said, aspects of consciousness that become as real as you want them to be. The more you meditate on them, the more real they become. So Saint Germain told me to write about violet Tara, and he showed me what he wanted me to write. And this is the aspect of the violet light, which dissolves imperfection and impurity, and the essence is forgiveness. So again, I've had experiences like a few days ago, I wanted to dissolve the smoke from the fire that we had here. And I called on violet Tara, and within an hour, the smoke dissolved. And I've also had health problems disappear from invoking violet Tara. Now, somebody else might invoke white Tara, but you have to put your heart into it, your energy into it. So all these gods are there to reveal to us different aspects of ourselves. Shiva revealed the power aspect, and, Lakshmi, abundance and love aspect. They're all aspects of ourselves.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Ramarishi, and thank you for the introduction to Gita.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you to Ramarishi ji. It was such a wonderful experience, and it kind of revalidates and renews your connection with divine by meeting such people who had these experiences. And one question I have, another question somebody sent me through WhatsApp is, when you're stuck in materialistic life and you have an ambition, and you're stuck by not reaching that ambition, and you're going through the same patterns in life, how do you get out of the patterns, and then how do you achieve success?
Yeah, well, the question is, what is success? Is it making $1 million a year? Is that success?
Yes. Yes, this,
So-
yeah, she wants to make, actually, she has a project that is very good for the community. At the same time, she wants to serve and make money.
Yes,
So, boom.
I understand. I'm not against money. Money is the oil that lubricates the gears. So again, it all comes back to going within to the center of your being and asking, what do I need to do? I am being shown how to be successful in this. First of all, is this the project that God wants me to do? Or is there something else? Then, okay, God, if you want me to do this, show me, and say, I am being shown what to do to be successful. And I am being shown any blockages that exist within me, like fear and doubt, maybe. So you look at those, and as you meditate, you will see perhaps some fear that you might fail, or some blame or anger or something. All these are things to look at and to dissolve. So the more you're connected with that chakra, it's not the physical heart, it's the jyoti within you, the sacred fire. The center of, that's where God is anchored in your body. So this is where God is anchored in your body. So the more you meditate on that, the more you get the direction. And then go forward.
So, Mr.
I am
Sure.
God in action. I am going where I meant to go. I am doing what I meant to do, but not from the ego, from the jyoti, from the God consciousness. Yes.
And these affirmations, I'm fearless, I'm divine, do those help?
Yes, in India, we call them mantras, but so you can do them in Sanskrit if you feel better, but if you do them in English, if you're comfortable with English, it definitely helps. Like I am being shown what to do.
Mr.
Okay.
Peter, we have another question from one of the person who joined in the Zoom. Kanti Mangu wants to ask, what is life all about? How do we achieve the pure consciousness?
Well, that's the $1 million question. There are many yogis, they go into a cave and they go into the Advaita the consciousness of oneness. And there's nobody there. They're not aware of a separate self. They're immersed in the God consciousness. But they can't be in a relationship. They can't hold a job. They can't drive a car because there's nobody there. Like Ramakrishna used to go into Nirvikalpa Samadhi. They had to feed him, take care of him. So mastery is beyond that. Mastery, you experience the oneness, but then you come back in the world to learn how to function, to help other people. If you just go into the oneness and disappear, you're not so much helping people in their day-to-day lives, which is where a lot of people need help. If you just tell people, don't worry, it's all an illusion, there is no other, just go into samadhi and that's the end of it. Well, sure, if you don't care if your family falls apart and you get fired from your job, sure, you can go into the oneness and be in bliss, But I think most of us, we have lessons, not only lessons in the world, we have service. And that's the lesson I think of Krishna, to Arjuna, you have to fight the battle. You agreed to this on some level, whether it's fighting a battle or going to work, raising a family, you have dharma here. So to do that as consciously and masterfully as possible, and to help other people, maybe your mission is to help homeless people, to do that, not just say, I'm going to be in the oneness and feel bliss for myself. Because I was offered that chance by Saint Germain, and I heard the suffering, I saw the suffering on the earth, and I could not turn my back on that. I said, I want to come back to earth to help people.
What do you think is the essence of Gita by Krishna to Arjun? What do we need to take from whole of Bhagwad Gita?
Well, I think first is that Krishna is, or I say Krishna, I mean God, is everywhere and in everything. And by whatever name you want to call him, you can call it Krishna consciousness, or, you can regard Krishna as a person, that God is everywhere and everything and knows your every thought. And the second one is the path of service, what I was saying, that we have a duty, we have a dharma in life. We came into these bodies for a purpose, and not to shy away from that, even if it means having to possibly hurt someone or cause pain and suffering. Sometimes we have to do that like a warrior. Maybe it's just slaying the illusion with the sword of discriminating intelligence, but we have a dharma, which is a path laid out for us, which we chose before we were born. There was a plan for our lives, and we have to be warriors in putting that plan into action and cutting through the illusions. Now, usually those illusions are the ones within ourselves. So we came here to free ourselves of ignorance and to learn to be God beings. And, what is God's plan for us? This is all God's movie. What did God intend in creating this movie? What role am I to play in that movie? And try to play it as best you can, not to shrink back from it. That's the Gita in 3 sentences. There's a lot more to it.
And we have from Vamshita. She wants to ask, can you describe more about oneness? How does it feel like?
I've had experience of of the oneness of like a nirvikalpa samadhi. And there is really nobody there. There was just oneness, and you don't really experience it until you come back from it. You're just merged in the absolute. So there's no self. You're not aware of who you are because there is no self. You are everything. You are God, basically, but not thinking I am God. You just are it, But you can't stay in that for very long and keep a human body.
Peter G, coming back to the suffering aspect of what you heard, it also leads us to, in human mind, since it can only process limited data at a time, and also depending on, how broad your mind is, what it means. So what I would like to ask you is, what is the relation of that suffering to the assumption that every suffering leads to more suffering?
It's
kind of a starting point to what might lead to happiness.
Yeah, well, this is the beginning point of Buddhism. The 4 noble truths of Buddhism is life itself. Don't expect ultimate happiness in life. The nature of life is not ultimately satisfying, And the second, what causes suffering? It's attachment to our desires. I want this, but I didn't get it, therefore I'm unhappy. Or I want to avoid something and it keeps coming to me and that's causing my suffering. No, the suffering is from the attachment to getting things our own way. So if we can let go of that, say, you know, it is what it is. It's natural in the human body to experience some suffering. So that's where the meditation comes in, to sit down on the cushion and say, what am I actually feeling? You know, oh, I'm feeling loneliness or I'm feeling anger or something. And to say, where did that originate? I can look at the source of that and dissolve it. You know?
So would it help to know ourselves, how our mind works first, then dwell into these things? Or does it matter?
Oh, yes. Well, that's where meditation comes in. You know, I like this, where you start out observing the breath, the in-breath and the out-breath, that calms the mind down. Then you observe the thoughts and the emotions going by in front of you, but you label them thinking. That's a thought. You don't identify with them. Then you go, who is observing the thoughts? There is a consciousness observing. The higher self is observing the lower self. You know, there is an enlightened self that's already enlightened, and that's observing the unenlightened self or the ego. So you want to identify with that higher self. And in meditation, you develop the habit of that, of being in that higher self. Yeah, they came as messengers. They don't come here to be worshipped. God doesn't care. God doesn't care about being worshipped. You know, God wants you to realize you are God. I mean, Krishna said, I am in the stars, I'm in the flowers, I am in you.
Yes, I'm in the smallest of the small and the humongous of the galaxies. So
exactly.
Yeah.
I had a similar experience with Violet Tara. You know, when I was first getting to know her, I said, you know, I'm almost starting to feel that you're a real being. And she came back with this tremendous energy and said, I am a real being.
Wow.
You know, I went, oh, excuse me. Yeah, sure.
Is how to, when a body is going through pain, how to cut pain. There's a question for one of my friend who is suffering. It's not an emotional pain, but if you know, she got operated and she's having some pain, how to cut pain? Is there a way?
Well, that's very tricky. You know, one is by, you know, observing who is having the pain. It's not actually my soul. My soul is beyond that. And another thing that women tell me in childbirth, you cannot resist it. You have to surrender to it and allow it to take its course, you know. And that's where I invoke violet Tara or the violet flame, try to see violet light going to the area where there's pain and say, God is in that place. And I ask God to come forth and dissolve that pain.
Wow.
So anyway.
And can you also share, Mr. Peter, what you shared yesterday with me, the meditation with open eyes?
Yes, I've been trying to do that the last few minutes. I look at the camera. So this is what Anandamayi Mai did and what Pearl did is, you know, the word namaste, that expression, the God in me honors the God in you. So you feel a sun in the center of your chest. And when you look at another person, know that the sun is there too. And you can give them a blessing by saying like, I am the Son of God, sending a ray of light from my heart to your heart. And that person also does the same thing to you. So this is what I call an open-eyed meditation that Pearl taught me. You just sit looking into each other's eyes, but not staring. You can let the eyes go out of focus. You just acknowledge that God is sitting in front of you. Now you can think of that person as Tara or Lakshmi or Krishna or Mother Mary or Jesus, whatever you want. And feel also, I am the presence of God. Basically, This is God looking at God. You know, the Krishna in me is looking at the Krishna in your heart. And just feel that, and then feel, I am love radiating out to you. I am the light of God radiating out to you into the whole world.
There's one more question from Sunita ji.
Okay.
She says something is happening in her heart right now. Does it mean anything? She's on a Zoom, she joined, she's seeing you, and she says something is happening in her heart. Does it mean anything?
Yes, it means something. It means, you see, there's no space actually, that my physical body is here in Mount Shasta, but my higher body is with each of you. It's with Roma Rishi in Oregon. We're actually all meeting someplace else in a temple, in an etheric temple, just like you're all in my living room or you're all seated here in front of me. Our higher bodies, our light bodies. So when I do this, I say, God in me is blessing God in you, and you're feeling that. It's because it's really happening. The distance doesn't mean anything. So we're really all together in one space, in the higher dimension here. And so when I am looking into the camera, I am looking into your eyes, and the God in my heart is sending love to the God in your heart, and I feel the God in your heart blessing my heart. I feel your love, and I thank you. Or my own God presence, my own Atman, does not answer immediately every question the way I would like, you know. So that's where patience comes in. And during that gap, when you don't hear a master, you don't hear God, you don't hear the saint or whatever it is, that's when you have to develop your own inner guidance. That's where meditation comes in, to distinguish between your mind, you know, your thoughts, other people's thoughts, to really feel God in your heart. Then you have to have that inner connection with your own God presence. Like you can feel the Jyoti, the sacred flame within you, guiding you. Like if you start to go in one direction, it doesn't feel good. Try going in the other direction. Then that feels good. That feels better. That's your guidance. You don't need a being appear to you and say, stop, turn around, go the other way. You know, that would be very nice. But the way you become a master is by learning to get the guidance within yourself. You know, like how does Krishna get guidance? Krishna is in tune with his Krishna nature, you know, which knows what to do. So my teacher Pearl used to say, the highest form of guidance is just to spontaneously do the right thing. So I think we could call it a day there. We could spend the whole day.
Yes. Thank you for your time, Mr. Peter. Really appreciate. And I'm sure like a lot of listeners enjoyed, and they're giving you hearts. Thank you so much, Mr. Peter, and thank you, Romershi ji. Namaste.
Thank you. Namaste. Namaste.